Good afternoon, everyone, once again. I know it's been a long time. It's been a long time since we've done our last World of Tanks episode. But now we're going to be back in the swing of things. And today we're going to be starting off with a fan-submitted replay. You guys have been sending in so many of them, and now I've got to spam these as much as I can. So I'm going to be spamming videos. Sorry for all the spam. But anyway, we've got this guy going by the name of Mad Zebra with his teammate Dusika, and they're going to be playing in the T14s on the map Arctic region. I believe this person actually goes by the real name of Jiri, maybe Jiri. I'm more inclined to say that it's Jiri. So he was saying that in his email that this is one of the most intense battles that he's ever had in his 7,000 games that he's played in this game. By the end of it, his hands were shaking. So that is sort of giving you guys a hint of what is going to be coming up and expectations. So his hands were shaking after this battle that's going to ensue over here, and I have to say it's non-stop action for the next few minutes here until a lull time. But anyway, so on we go. It's a T14 tank. What do you guys think about this? This is a premium tank. I actually own it myself. It's quite relatively cheap. What do you guys think about it? Well, I think it's overall a pretty decent tank, at least on taking tanks that are medium tanks or weaker than itself. Against the other tanks, like heavier ones, the T14 really just cannot stack up against them. Overall, let's start off with actually probably the armor. The armor of the T14 is quite thick. All you have to do simply is actually look at it. And now I'm actually going to switch on over to a third-person perspective, because he was actually saying in his email, it's best enjoyed from a third-person perspective. And I actually think it's best to look at a first-person, but hey-ho, just for the sake of seeing what the armor's like, we'll change on over to a third-person perspective. As you can see, the T14 is quite indeed heavily armored. You can take a look around the sides, and you can notice how its tracks are covered by these armored skirts. That alone just shows you, oh hey, this is a tank that is indeed heavily armored. It's wearing a suit of armor. And so basically what you could say about it, let's actually get on to some comparisons. Well, to be honest with you guys, I don't play many American tanks. I have hardly really gone up along the American tech tree, but I can still make some comparisons. For example, against the same tier tanks such as the M4 Sherman, the T14 is more heavily armored along the turret, the rear armor, the side skirts, much more heavily armored than the M4 Sherman. So in that respect, it's a better tank. Against the T1 in comparison, the T1 has actually a heavier frontal armor. So I suppose those are some important considerations. Whenever you're taking on the enemy, you're of course always going to be pointing your front armor at them. At least you should be. I know a lot of people don't, and that's always another story I should probably pick up on with you guys later. But anyway, so that is the T14 in terms of armor-wise. It's a very heavily armored tank, and its turret is definitely a very hard thing to penetrate. Whenever you can, people always recommend when you're playing with T14 to play in a hull down position. What does a hull down position mean? Well, it means that only your turret is exposed, because obviously, as I was saying, it has that most heavily armored portion of the entire tank. And so if you can only expose your turret, whether that's some sort of terrain that's blocking your hull from being exposed, whether it's an enemy vehicle that's blocking your hull from being exposed, then go for it. Okay, your turret is the only thing that should be shown to your opponent. But in terms of the actual cons with the tank, it is relatively slow with its acceleration, and this is what I find a little bit interesting. If you look at the items, the consumables that Jiri is using at the moment, he's actually replaced his fire extinguisher with a 100 octane fuel supply. Interesting stuff. I've never seen anyone use fuel. I personally hate using fuel because it only gives you, what, an extra 5% acceleration and turret traverse per match. And so I think, hey, you could probably use it betterly on a fire extinguisher, because chances are you do actually get set on fire quite often in games. So I tend to go for that rather than traverse speed. But then again, I can actually totally understand why he's going for the 100 octane. It's, firstly, it's not gold costing, it's not the 105 octane, so at least he's spending only credits for it. But it's also Good for this tank specifically because it has a slow acceleration, especially along hills. It has slow traverse speed with its turret, and so that helps boost that capability. 5%, I'm not exactly sure how much that's actually going to help, but well, I guess so, hey? Now look at all the wreckages across the battlefield. This is exactly what he's meaning about a tense standoff at this choke point over here in Arctic region. So many tanks. Him and his friend, him and the other T-14 have managed to collect 8 kills between themselves. My god, that is a lot. Effectively taking on over half of the enemy team just amongst 2 players. And when something like that happens, you gotta sort of think to yourself, where was my the rest of my team? Were they kind of useless? Well, they were acting as sort of cannon fodder for the enemy team. You could see how the enemy team tore to pieces his allies right in front of him at that choke point. All those smoldering wrecks back there. Oh my gosh, we could probably take a bit more of a look here, and you can see, yes, all of those smoldering wrecks over there. Some of them his allies. How unfortunate, eh? So these tanks are moving on up forward to go support their base, it looks like, just because we've got an SU-85B down there. Also failed to mention, when we were talking about the accelerations and that, most importantly, the turret is what I finally wanted to finish off the T-14. The turret is relatively weak, and no, I don't mean the actual turret like the defensive turret. I mean the actual gun itself is relatively weak, and that's why I was mentioning at the beginning of the replay that it's used against medium tier tanks and also any lower tanks, because it doesn't really have the penetration of other vehicles at its tier. It has a 75mm cannon, unlike the T1 Heavy or the M4, which have 76mm. It doesn't really have that penetrative power, and so that's why it should be focused more as a supporting role and taking on lighter tanks when possible. Otherwise, T-14 probably going to have a difficult time against other vehicles like a KV or something like that, right? Okay, so but the last moments going on in the game, and that is the enemy tank taken down. The T-28 is gone. So collectively between him and his friend, 10 tanks, and collectively between these tanks and the Matilda, 13. My god, that is 13 out of 15 tanks on the enemy team. Between these 3 players, they are extravagant in their own rights. This is an ace tanker replay. So that is how Mad Zebra got his ace tanker for the T-14. Let's check out the personal achievements. He destroyed all those tanks right there. Notice the Churchill, heavy tank indeed. KV-1 as well. Wow. Very good stuff. You'd think that would be a bit uncommon for a T-14 to actually penetrate those tanks, but he still managed it, probably hitting the underside of them, maybe the side, something like that. Also damaged those ones right there. Battle heroes, all of that. Top Gun for Mad Zebra, Steel Wall for Mad Zebra, Sniper for Dusika. So well done to Jiri for actually accomplishing an ace tanker. Hope you guys enjoyed this replay, and until next time, I will see you soon.